Hello, all, and welcome. Coaching for Transformation is back again with another mini series. I'm Dario Minaya, here with Susan Minaya, Executive Coach, Leadership Strategist, and Learning and Development Expert. Now, over the last few episodes, we have been talking about culture by design in the age of AI. We explored how AI will amplify the culture an organization already has, why culture is not just a vibe but a system, and why what leaders tolerate eventually becomes part of the culture. So, today we're going to be making an important shift. We are moving from culture to capability because culture sets the conditions, but capability turns those conditions into practice. Stay tuned to learn more. Susan, welcome back.
Hey, Dario, thank you.
Of course. So let's dive in.
Okay.
Now, the idea, right? Culture setting conditions and capability turning those conditions into practice, that raises a really important question, right? Who helps the organization build the human capability required for the AI culture it wants?
There's the question, Dario. That's exactly the right question. And my answer is strong learning and development leaders, right? Because not learning and development leaders who are simply waiting for someone to request a course or waiting for every AI decision to be made somewhere else in the organization. I mean, learning and development leaders who understand how people build skills, change their behavior, develop judgment, experiment responsibly, and apply learning to real business challenges. AI adoption is not just a technology rollout, it's a human capability challenge, Dario. And because of that, learning and development has a much bigger role to play than many organizations probably realize.
Now, that phrase, right, human capability challenge, it feels super important because a lot of organizations are still talking about AI primarily as a tool issue or a technology issue.
Oh, it's so true. And of course, the technology tools, data governance, and security, all those things are super important. But the presence of an AI tool does not mean that people know how to use it well. It doesn't mean that they know when not to use it, how to ask better questions or interact with it, evaluate the quality of the output, or actually apply it responsibly in the flow of work. And that's where human capability challenge comes in.
So, access is not the same thing as readiness.
Exactly. Access is not readiness. Awareness is not capability, and experimentation is not the same thing as responsible adoption. And an organization can give people access to AI tools, but if they don't understand how to use those tools thoughtfully, you could end up with an inconsistent practice or just a lot of scattered activity that doesn't actually improve performance in the organization. And that's why this conversation belongs in the learning leadership space.
Because people have to learn their way into the new way of working.
Exactly. Can you imagine? Think of all the hype that's gone around that. Leaders and teams have to learn. Managers have to learn how to coach people through it. Organizations have to learn what good use looks like in their specific context. And so AI adoption is not simply about teaching people how to use a tool. It's about helping people develop the skills, behaviors, judgment, and confidence to use AI in ways that support the work, the customer, the employee experience, and the business.
So, why learning and development then? Right? Why are learning leaders uniquely positioned for this moment?
Because strong learning and development leaders already work at the intersection of people, performance, behavior, and capability. And that's exactly where AI adoption will either succeed or it's going to fail. So think about what effective L&D leaders do when they're operating strategically. They help the organization understand what capabilities are needed. They translate business priorities into skills and behaviors, and they design learning experiences that help people practice, reflect, it's so important, apply, and improve. They support leaders and managers in reinforcing that behavior. They teach leaders how to effectively manage through that change, and they create ways to build confidence over time. So those are not side issues in an AI adoption. Those are central issues.
So, L&D is not just the group that builds the AI training module.
No, it's not. That is the distinction. And if L&D is only seen as the group that builds the course after everyone else has made all the decisions, then the organization is truly underutilizing the learning function. But if L&D is operating as a strategic capability partner, and that's kind of on them to do that, then learning leaders can help shape how the organization builds readiness for the organization from the very beginning. So they need to be in the mix of the existing conversations at the top of the house in the organization. So what behaviors do we want to encourage? What risks do people need to recognize? What leadership practices will help people use it responsibly? What real business problems should we be using to apply our capability with AI?
Yeah, that is a much bigger role than just training delivery.
Exactly, it is. And that's why I think AI is creating a real inflection point for learning leaders. L&D may not own AI, but it can shape the human capability system that determines how AI is adopted, practiced, and scaled. And that is the core idea. And this is like so important, Dario. It is so important for L&D to understand where they are in this point in time.
I mean, if it's so important, say that again, because that feels like the center of this episode.
Exactly. And L&D may not own AI, but it definitely can shape the human capability system that determines how it's adopted, practiced, and scaled. And that means L&D has a role in shaping the skills, the behaviors, and the mindset. How leaders going to effectively lead through that and the learning experiences that the organization needs. And it's not just about tools development, it's about reinforcing systems that help people use it well.
Now, you said earlier that this is an inflection point for L&D
Mhm.
leaders.
Mhm.
Is this also a bit of a mirror moment for L&D?
Oh, it totally is. And this is a wonderful time for L&D. And I just hope that they see the opportunity for them to really rise, For years, many learning leaders have been working, right, to move L&D from order taker to strategic partner, from training provider to capability builder, from activity-based learning to performance-centered learning. And AI makes that shift even more urgent because if L&D is still positioned primarily as a course builder function, an order taker, it may struggle to influence the AI conversation. And it may be brought in late and asked to create training after the strategy, tools, and governance have already been decided. And I think that they need to be aware of that, of the role that they have. But if they're positioned very strategically as a capability partner, it can help the organization not only think differently from the start, but also think more strategically.
So the question is not just what training do people need? It is what capability does the organization need to build?
Well, I think that's really the shift. They become performance consultants for the organization if they're smart, right? Not training providers, but performance consultants. So if you think about the difference, a training provider mindset says, what content do people need? A capability partner mindset says, what do people need to be able to do differently, better, or more responsibly in the work ahead with AI? And that's a very different question. So when we ask the capability question, we start thinking about real work, real decisions, real use cases, risks, leadership behaviors, and performance outcomes that we need to be able to achieve.
All right. And AI makes that especially important because the work itself is changing.
Absolutely. AI is changing how people work. So if the work is changing, capability has to change too. And L&D should be right smack in the middle of all of that, if not leading that conversation.
So, one thing I can imagine learning leaders saying is, but we do not own the AI strategy. We do not own the tools. We do not own IT. We do not own governance. So, what does influence look like when L&D does not own those things?
That is such an important question, Dario. So thank you for asking it because learning leaders, as we said earlier, don't own the strategy, the tools, or the governance, and they shouldn't pretend that they do, right? But influence does not always require ownership. Influence means helping the organization ask better questions. So they're like the mirror, they're the reflector. It means convening the right people. It means translating the difference of business needs, human capability, leadership behavior, and learning design. These are the questions they should be having with the group of people that are typically architecting all of this in an organization, but they don't think about those things, right? So it means being able to get the conversations going about where the organization is going with AI as it relates to capabilities that people need and what leaders need to model and what practices, managers need to reinforce and what support employees need to be able to effectively integrate AI into the flow of work. And these are formative questions that inform the role of learning and development within the organization in the age of AI. And that is influence.
So, L&D becomes a translator and a convener.
Oh, I love that word. They absolutely are a translator, but I especially love the word a convener, right? Because it's so important. L&D should be able to pull partners together to extract what they need to know how they need to support them. They're also sense makers and a capability architect. So learning leaders can bring all of these parties together: IT, HR, legal, compliance, operations, business leaders, frontline managers, and employees to understand where is AI already showing up, where are our risks that we have, and where are the opportunities, and where can learning help, right? So they don't have to be in everything, but where can we actually make an impact? And that's not going rogue. That's a strategic partnership.
I like that distinction because in a later episode, we're going to talk about why learning leaders cannot afford to wait on AI.
Mm-hmm.
But you're not saying they should run off and do their own thing.
Absolutely not, because responsible influence is not a rogue action, right? So learning leaders should not be bypassing the importance of governance or IT or creating risk for the organization, but they also should not be sitting back waiting for somebody to tell them what to do. So there is a responsible middle ground, and they can start building AI literacy for sure. They can identify capability questions for the organization. Where do we have gaps? They can listen to what employees and leaders are experiencing. And they can also start looking at things and say, you know what? How do we change or help build that capability for the organization for what we need with employees? And that's the influence role.
So if I am a learning and development leader listening to this and I want to step into that role,
Mm-hmm.
what kinds of things should I be thinking about?
Well, I would start with 3 areas if it was me, right? As a learning leader, which
Mhm.
I've been before. This will sound familiar probably from prior podcasts where we talked about
Yeah.
looking at the work, the worker, and the workplace, but
Yeah.
you can't ignore that. Like any responsible performance consultant or learning leader will look at those 3 areas. So the first is understand the business. Where is AI already affecting the work? Where are leaders feeling pressure? And where are employees experimenting? And how are they experimenting? Is it in a good way or not so good way? Where could AI improve performance, speed, quality, access, or even decision making within the organization? Second, understand the capability gap. What do people need to know and practice, right? We talked about what I said before. How do we practice decision making, right? What is quality? How do we make good decisions about what we do, what's performance, what's allowable, what's not? Do we understand governance? And third, build partnerships. L&D should not do this alone. Strong learning leaders really need to partner with the group I always talk about: IT, HR, legal, compliance, operations, and business leaders. That's their circle, that's their posse. They need to bring the learning lens to the table, but they also need to respect all of these different aspects of AI adoption and be able to help mediate what is it and what you need. How do I translate that into what employees need from a capability standpoint?
So the learning leader is not just asking, can we offer an AI workshop?
No.
No. They're asking, how do we help the organization build AI capability responsibly?
Yeah. And, even though in AI workshop, I laughed about that, but it could be part of the answer. There's no problem with that. But it's also not the whole answer. And the bigger question is, how do we help people apply AI to meaningful work in ways that are productive, ethical, aligned, and useful? And I think those are good buckets, right? That may include literacy workshops. It could be, hey, let's talk about use cases across the organization. It could be design thinking sessions with people across the organization to try to figure out, how do we do this better, right? This isn't a problem L&D has to solve, but again, I go back to their conveners. So it may also be challenge-based learning, where people learn how to apply the skills in situations and make good decisions, right? And then also toolkits for managers. There's so many things here: simulations, practice labs, communities of practice, skills validation, even hackathons. Those are so fun. Remember those?
Yeah.
But the point is not to check the box that says training is completed. The point is to build capability in the organization. And L&D has a lot of different ways that they could do that.
Something else I wanted to point out, you're also connecting this to leadership, right? Not just skill building.
Mm-hmm.
So why is that important?
Because AI adoption won't succeed through individual skill building alone, right?
Yeah.
Leaders, as we talked before, shape the environment in which people use AI. So they clarify the expectations and they also model the behavior. They create that safety for learning and experimentation. So if leaders are vague and inconsistent, then the organization is going to have that experience. If they're intentional and curious and they're excited about it and want to try it, then that's going to be the culture, right? That's what we talked about in our last episodes.
Yeah.
So that's why L&D's role really includes leadership development.
So this connects right back to the culture episodes.
Yeah, totally. So culture sets the conditions and capability turns those conditions into practice, but leaders are responsible for reinforcing both. So sorry, leaders, you got a lot on your shoulders. There's a lot to have to do. That's why leadership is so important. If an organization wants an AI culture that's responsible and innovative, ethical, and human centered, that's a big ask, right?
Yeah.
Then leaders need the capability to lead that way. They need to communicate clearly and coach people through uncertainty. And so, they're responsible for setting the guardrails and, they can also be the people that shut down people's ability to be able to learn and experiment. So that's the leadership work, and L&D should be helping to build that capability with leaders as well.
Now, it sounds like this is a major opportunity for
Oh.
L&D leaders.
It so is. I call it a burning platform. Like this is like a mega moment for L&D leaders, because there's not that often in the world and our experience of the way of work that we have an opportunity that's so disruptive, that L&D has such an important role to play. So learning leaders, if they're not taking advantage of this opportunity to really become strategic leaders, then shame on them, And may be one of the clearest opportunities that they have had in years past to demonstrate their strategic value. And that opportunity depends on how they show up, right? So if they wait to be told what they have to do, then they're going to be stuck in reactive mode, just like all the past years, right? But if they step forward as a strategic capability partner, it can actually help the organization learn their way forward into the future. And that doesn't mean that they have to have all the answers. Remember I said convening, they're collaborators, they ask questions, they're good about bringing all the insights and the input together to be able to determine what's the best solution for what we have to do going forward. So, they help build shared understanding, and they design responsible learning experiences and help build that human capability.
This is not about L&D claiming ownership over AI, right? It is about L&D claiming its responsibility for human capability.
Exactly. L&D does not need to own AI to lead in this space. They can be the influencers, right? We've talked about that in other podcasts, but it does need to own its role in helping people, teams, leaders build the capability to use it responsibly and effectively. And this is the moment for strong learning leaders. And for those who are not yet operating that way, this may be the opportunity to become stronger learning leaders.
Well, Susan, we're getting close to close here. So what is one thing, right, you want learning leaders to take away from this conversation?
Well, I guess I would say AI adoption is not just a technology rollout, right? It's a human capability challenge, first and foremost. And learning and development doesn't own AI, but it can shape the capability system that determines how AI is adopted, practiced, and scaled, right? So on the human side is where they have influence. So if you're a learning leader, do not underestimate your role. This is a moment to step forward, build partnerships, ask better questions, and help your organization learn its way into responsible AI adoption.
And that is a strong place to land. And in our next episode, we will continue this conversation by talking about why learning leaders cannot afford to wait on AI and what they can begin doing now, even while the organization is still sorting through tools, policies, and governance. Susan, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Dario.
Until next time.